My name is Cindy Napoli, and I'm a member of the Littleton Board of Selectmen. One of the goals of the Board of Selectmen is to address the opioid crisis that is gripping our nation and local communities, including Littleton. Over the past 2 years, the Selectmen have taken initiatives to raise awareness about addiction and the danger of opioids. These initiatives included the showing of the documentary If They Had Known at the high school, which raised awareness about the dangers of mixing prescription drugs with alcohol. We also collaborated with the Littleton Public Schools to arrange for guest speaker Richie Farrell to speak to the high school students and their parents. Through connections made with members of our community and with assistance from the Littleton Police Department and the Littleton Fire Department, the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction was created to help raise awareness and provide information about resources available to help anyone battling addiction or seeking help for a friend or a family member. The LCAA refers to opioid addiction as the epidemic hiding in plain sight. Many people prefer to believe that our community is immune from this crisis, but Littleton has already lost 2 young adults to opioid-related overdoses, and many of our neighbors are currently in treatment or have luckily been able to win their battle by overcoming addiction. As part of the initiative to raise awareness, I will be meeting with different members from our community who have bravely volunteered to come forward and share their personal story on LCTV. It is our hope that by sharing these stories, the stigma that is associated with addiction will stop, and people will be empowered to seek help, while others will embrace their courage and support them during their struggle to overcome this terrible disease. Following each segment, we will share a list of local resources, and that information is also available on the town's website and the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction Facebook page. So we're here today with Betty Lorenson, who has offered to come forward and share her story on behalf of the Littleton Coalition Against Addiction to help raise awareness in our community about addiction. So, hi Betty.
Hi.
Thank you for coming and being with me tonight and to share your story.
You're welcome.
You live in Littleton?
Yes.
Okay.
We lived here for 34 years.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know your story, so please feel free to jump in whenever you're comfortable. And
Okay, well, my name's Betty, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since January 26, 2010. So a little over 8 years now I've been sober. And the reason, I have never done this, and I'm really nervous right now, but I do believe that someone has to start to stop the stigma of this disease. Too many people are dying from it, and it nearly took my life. And you know, it's scary to think back to 8 years ago how far down I had gone. My story isn't really typical. I was a very high-functioning alcoholic. I had a very well-paying job, highly respected. Very few of my friends ever knew that I had any drinking problem. In public, I never had more than 2 drinks.
okay.
Except maybe at a wedding or something when other people were. But in general, I never did. But at home, it was a different story. And it's an inherited disease in a lot of ways. I come from alcoholic parent. It's one of those things that I always swore would never happen to me because I had seen what it had done to my family growing up.
Okay.
And back then, the stigma was worse. And so you know, I had seen that, and I'm an intelligent woman. I read all the books and knew all the signposts to look for and everything, and it wasn't going to happen to me.
Right.
Until it did.
Right.
And then it's a very soul-crushing disease. It takes you from the inside out. It takes away your soul, your self-respect. It takes away everything, and leaves you just a shell of who you were.
Right.
And by the time you realize, you're too far gone.
Too far gone.
Yeah.
So what was the breaking point for you?
The breaking point for me was basically an intervention from my family, where I was told either get sober or I won't be in your life.
Okay.
And I'm very close with my family. We're inseparable. And I could lose everything. I could have lost, I didn't even come close to losing my job, but I could have, and it wouldn't have been the devastating idea of losing my family.
Right.
So that was what changed everything. That made me decide that I had to do something.
Okay.
And so that worked for me, and who knows if it had happened a week earlier, it might not have worked.
Right.
A week later, I could have been dead. But the stigma, I guess the stigma is the thing that just is so hard to explain to people who don't have the disease, or haven't been through it.
Right.
I sat the first meeting that I go to AA, and that's the program that works for me. It worked for my parent, and I firmly believe in it. Other things work for other people, but that's what works for me.
Right.
And, I sat in the parking lot of that first meeting before I went in, and I had everything planned for my suicide. I knew exactly where I was going to crash the car. I knew how fast to go. I knew what time of day to do. I had everything planned, because the thought of going in there and saying in front of a bunch of people I'm an alcoholic was more than I could do. And were it not for one person who came up to my car window and knocked on it, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Really?
Yeah.
And they were going into the meeting, and they
yes,
encouraged you
she was going into the meeting,
Boy, that's
and
incredible.
she knew she hadn't seen me before, and she came and she said, "Come on, I'll walk in with you." And I'm like, to this day I credit her,
Right.
and my family with saving my life.
Right.
My daughter, my husband, my stepdaughter, they all helped save my life, and this particular woman, whom I won't name, but who is still a friend of mine today.
Wonderful.
Truly saved my life.
Right.
And she kept at me. She wouldn't let me, I went in and I was like, okay, I'll sit there and I'll just shut up and this will be over with. It's like, take your medicine,
Right.
be done with it. And then at the end of the meeting, she's, where are you going tomorrow? And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere, just leave me alone. I don't know who you are, but you're driving me nuts now.
Right, right.
And she's like, no, you're going here, you're doing this. And slowly, slowly but surely, it came around, and I came around. But it takes a long time, and it's not a simple thing, but it's definitely the best decision I ever made.
Right, right. So that was the treatment that you chose, was the AA meetings, or did you go to a facility prior to that?
I went to a facility first.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually very dangerous it's actually really dangerous to detox from alcohol on your own.
Okay.
It's one of the most dangerous detoxes that you can do. People go into seizures and will die.
Wow.
So I went into a facility for a week, and then when I came out, that's what I did.
Great.
And I kept that up, and little by little, things started to fall back in place. And it's an amazing feeling when, after probably 3 years of waking up and looking in the mirror and hating what you saw, to wake up and not hate that person. Right. Not be ecstatic, but not hate that person.
Right.
And not wish you were dead.
Right.
And if this program that you are doing here helps anyone, then it's worth it.
Right.
Because it's hard to explain, but it's terrifying and it's lonely, because I lost a lot of people that I thought were really good friends.
Really?
When they realized I wasn't drinking, people didn't want to be around me. People don't want the sober guy over there watching how much they're drinking.
Right.
Which I don't care what you drink.
Right.
It's none of my business, and it has nothing to do with me, but it makes people uncomfortable.
Right, right.
And so you find out very quickly that a lot of people that you thought were really good friends really aren't.
Right. So you had to change your whole social circle.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
The majority of it.
The majority of it. And not by your choice.
Right. And not by choice, but not all of it. But I mean, I still have some of my friends, but not all of them.
Right.
And I can't imagine what that's like for someone who is a social drinker. I wasn't. So I wasn't like going out with these people and getting drunk or being the life of the party. So it wasn't that people associated me, you know, that way.
Right.
I was one of these people that, I was the driver. I was driving people home. I never had more than 2 drinks out in public.
Right.
So it wasn't that I was, so I can't imagine people who that's their whole social life, how isolating it is.
Yeah, right. And that is, you know, you touched on it, is the stigma.
Yeah.
I see it on Facebook. You know, we just put out a poll asking people about a drop-in center if they'd come be interested in having a resource like that in our community. And right now, there's only 19 people that voted, and it's split, half yes and half no.
Yeah.
And someone said to me, you know, people aren't going to reply yes on Facebook. And I said, but it's just about information and resources. It's not saying that you have a problem. But I know that there are people out there that have a problem.
Right.
And they must feel so isolated and lonely.
And it's exceptionally isolating and very lonely. And you won't find people coming out and saying it on Facebook. And I mean, even after this airs, there will be people in this town who will see it, who will look at me different.
Right.
There are a lot of
people,
which
is sad.
You know,
that's really unfortunate.
It is,
honestly.
but there are people that are gonna. I mean, I guarantee you.
Right.
You know, there are people who are gonna look at me differently. I'll go into Donlands, and there are gonna be people who are gonna whisper, you know, she's the, because there's still that stigma.
Right. You know what? I hope that they give you a hug and say, "Good for you."
Yeah, me too. But
you know,
that's
a response I would give.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be, because until people feel comfortable, it is a disease, just like opioid addiction is a disease, and people can't control it. Like you said, it's hereditary, and it's unfortunate. It's, you know, if it was cancer or something else, people wouldn't look at it in a negative light.
I mean, excuse me, I have high blood pressure, but I can tell you that, and nobody thinks, oh, she's, you know, she's one of those, you know, nobody's thinking they're going to catch high blood pressure from me. You know, people, if I say I'm an alcoholic, people look at me and say, oh, poor thing, she couldn't control herself, or she couldn't, you know, like it's a failing of my character.
Right.
You know, and that's, I mean, it's definitely better than it was back, you know, 20 or 30 years ago, but it's still not, especially with the crisis with opioids, it's not where it needs to be, because we're losing a whole generation of brilliant and, you know, amazing people to a terrible, terrible thing.
Right. You're absolutely right.
You know.
So we'll just keep trying to get the information out there. And honestly, I really appreciate you coming forward and sharing your story, because it's our hope that this will make a difference and make people feel comfortable to come forward and share their story and stop the stigma. Because until we stop the stigma and start talking about this issue, which does exist, and be supportive of people that are going through treatment or need help, it's just not going to go away.
Right.
So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story with me. It's good for you.
Thanks.
You know, seriously, you should be proud of yourself. I know your family is. And it's great that, kudos to that woman, whoever she is, for taking that initiative and reaching out to someone that she didn't know.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of that. Yeah, I've seen it on Facebook, and I'm sure you have too. You never know what your words are gonna, how your words are gonna affect someone's life.
Right, right.
I mean, and she didn't know until the following January, when I got my 1-year coin, and I told my story and said that she had no idea that she had saved my life that day.
Right.
And, you know, people don't know, you know, you can look at someone and, you know.
You never know what they're going through, what they're feeling inside. It's so true.
Right.
And one of the other segments that we're going to have is Barbara Wickham runs the See a New Sun Foundation in Littleton, and she's going to come forward and talk about suicide prevention and how it relates to addiction. Right. So, they do go hand in hand. They do go hand in hand. So this is a perfect example of that, and it's also a perfect example of how random acts of kindness are so important. And in your case, it really did save your life. So we're happy for you. Happy that you're here, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks. Thank you.